as your kids begin to grow, you can either kind of go that route of we're going to do school at home, or you can slowly start to transition to something different. And for me, that was recognizing how well I had done with delight-directed learning style in my own years, and figuring out what that looked like now that I was a mom of multiple kids and kids who were really passionate about certain things.
Welcome to Our Life Homeschooling. My name is Sherry, Christian, wife to my high school sweetheart Nelson, and thankful mom to 10 incredible kids. I'm the author of the blog and YouTube channel Our Life Homeschooling, where I share homeschooling encouragement for everyday moms. I believe that motherhood is ministry, and homeschooling is simply an extension of parenting. My passion is to cheer on other moms who are at home doing the most important work of all, raising the next generation for the glory of God. Hi, and welcome back to Our Life Homeschooling podcast. I'm excited to share today's guest with you. This is Julie Kreke, and she's going to talk to us about delight-directed learning. Julie and I had a long conversation before and after this recording. We had so much in common, and I think our styles of homeschooling are very similar. So if you're someone who is looking for a simpler approach, if you want to let your kids learn by their interest, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Let's go ahead and get started. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. I've been excited to have you on. I had a commenter say something a couple years ago, ask me, have I ever met Julie Kreke? Because she's like, you remind me so much of her, and your family seems so similar. That's how I found you. And
I love that.
I love watching your YouTube channel. So if you could just introduce yourself to our viewers.
Sure. I'm Julie Kreke. I have 11 kids. Jason and I, we didn't start out planning to have a large family, so we have kind of just adapted our life as we went along. We lived at first in the city, and then we moved out to the country because our kids needed room to run, and we wanted to start having animals and build up a homestead, and that's where we are now. So the most unconventional thing about our life probably is that we live in a really small house. Again, not something that we planned, but here we are, and it works. We've just kind of figured out how to fit a big family into a small space and do all the things we do. So yes, we have a YouTube channel, Jason and Julie, and I'm on Instagram too. If you all are on Instagram, it's just my name, Julie Kreke. And then I have a website that is thedelightfulhomeschool.com. So it's just offering encouragement for other homeschooling mamas.
And I love your blog. I've been looking on there, and there's just so many things. There's large family, there's delight-directed learning. I think one time I saw your math games, and that just looked like something that I tucked away for later because kids learn so well through games. Just so many great things on there. So definitely that's something that I have a couple of posts that I was like, I've got to look into that.
Nice. I am slowly adding to it. The thing that encourages me with it, because I feel like I'm not on here every week, but every time I add, it's this collection that keeps growing. And so it's just not something that's there temporarily, like, Instagram stories and then disappears, but it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I'd love for it to be a home where people can just find whatever they need relating to homeschooling or motherhood with large families. So that's good encouragement for me. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah. It's something, years ago when I started homeschooling, and we were just kind of we had just had probably our 6th. I was looking for any moms of large families that were doing something similar that I could just latch onto. I found Kelly Crawford from Generation Cedar. I'm not sure if I had her on here a couple months ago, but your blog would have been one that I would have been like, oh, this is one that I can completely relate to, and would have been such an encouragement. So
It was the same for me. This is what brought me to the internet, was early on. I think I had 3 kids at the time when I discovered, I'm trying to remember what it was, Amy Roberts' blog, I guess, who I got to know later. I think she was one of the first blogs that I started reading. And this is the beauty of the internet, is finding community and encouragement, because I was in a season of my life where I didn't know anyone else who had a larger family or was headed that way. I felt really alone. And so the internet provided me that beginnings of community, which I now have in, real life too. But it's a beautiful thing.
It is. It really is. And one of the things that you talk a lot about is delight-directed learning. And this fascinates me because our journey, when we started homeschooling, I was very by the book, came from the public school mentality. I printed off all the objectives for our kindergarten son who's now 20.
Wow.
And we were just going to stick with it, and we were going to be above grade level. And wow, that slowly shifted. And as he entered the older years and, middle school, high school, I started realizing how little the curriculum mattered and how important our relationship was, how much I wanted him to just kind of delve into different areas that he was interested in just so he could find out what he was good at. So this is a subject I'm really interested in talking about. And if you could just maybe explain to some people who aren't familiar with delight-directed learning, what is it? What are just kind of the main points of what is it not too?
Sure. Everybody has their own slight definitions for things. And so for me, delight-directed learning, this idea started formulating in my mind when my children were small. I was actually homeschooled during my high school years. My mom pulled all 4 of us out of the public school system at the same time, and I was the oldest. So I was getting ready to enter high school. And I had loved school. I loved learning, but I was really excited about homeschooling. And she pulled us all out because of health reasons. And so because of that, she was just trying to regain health. We were figuring a lot of things out in the house. And so as a result, I kind of stumbled into unschooling. She tried to do a little bit of structured things with me, but for the most part, I was an avid reader. And so she just kind of let me go. And so that was my experience with homeschooling, was what I call now delight directed. So I would get really interested in something and I would jump into it and learn all about it. And whenever I had my own kids, like you, Sherry, I started out thinking that we're going to have a structure and we're going to, and all of that is good with little ones. I think it's good to offer some daily structure, which I can talk about more later, because most little ones thrive on some type of routine like that. However, as your kids begin to grow, you can either kind of go that route of we're going to do school at home, or you can slowly start to transition to something different. And for me, that was recognizing how well I had done with delight-directed learning style in my own years, and figuring out what that looked like now that I was a mom of multiple kids and kids who were really passionate about certain things. So delight-directed learning in our home now that it's evolved, it's not unschooling. Okay, unschooling is I think it's a little too unstructured for me as a mom. I want to know that my kids are getting those daily practices in language arts, math, skills that I think will support whatever their interest is.
Yeah.
So we do a small amount of daily subjects, daily requirements, but the majority of time is me allowing my kids to pursue their interests. And so that is kind of in a nutshell what it is for me. And the older my kids get, especially in those high school years, is when it really blossoms, really flourishes, because as you trust your kids with their own education and they start figuring out the things that interest them, it's very exciting to watch it develop and move into what is your life going to look like as an adult? And so it's this transitioning into adulthood in a way that is unique for each child.
Yeah, and I completely relate. I see some of our older kids. So our older boys, our oldest is 20, so he's an adult, and then our next is 17, and then our daughter is turning 16, and they're starting to develop interests. Well, they started a little while ago, but they're interests outside of the scope of what me or my husband can do. And they have these gifts and these talents. My one daughter, she's such a great artist, and neither of us have any skill at art at all. And just to see them, some of them are just musically talented, and to see them take off, I just think, what are they going to accomplish? How are they going to stand on the foundation we've given them and go off and do other things, do bigger things? It really is exciting to see them be passionate about different things and learn about things that are outside of what me and my husband are good at. It's just,
Right.
it's really exciting. When do you begin delight-directed learning with your kids? And you said that some of it is structured. There are some subjects that are structured. What would those be? What part of your day is structured and what part is kind of a little bit freer for them to pursue their interests?
For my little ones, learning how to read is something that is guided by me. I wait until I sense that they're at that place where they're ready and open. For some, that was much later than others. You know, I had one child that really didn't pick up reading until they were 10, which was, you know, it felt scary, but then they so quickly jumped into more advanced reading. It was really interesting how they, at that right time, how they kind of went forward more quickly. I have another one who started reading at 4, you know, and was in chapter books by the time she was turning 5. So there's just that big discrepancy, you know, reading, language arts. We do, you know, for little kids, 15 minutes of concentrated time is enough in a subject. I remember early on, I think it was Susan Bauer who wrote The Story of the World. I was at one of her talks and she said, you know, it's amazing what you can get done in 20 minutes a day. And
it is.
Past that 20 minutes, you know, their minds kind of start to lose them a little bit. If it's something that is challenging for them, like, you know, math, for example, that's another subject that we do a little bit of math practice each day and a little bit of writing or kind of spelling practice, something like that. And past that, it's read alouds and then a lot of playtime, audiobooks. You know, it's very free for my little ones. Play is one of the best ways that kids learn when they're small, and being outside. So for them, if we're talking about like that kindergarten through, you know, we don't do grades, so that's not really a good measure, but you know, my 8-year-old, 9-year-old, that kind of age, I want to keep it really short. You know, 15, 20 minutes of practicing some reading, 15, 20 minutes of doing some math, you know, et cetera. And then, you know, the rest of their day, they can play, they can build Legos while I'm reading aloud to them or whatever. As it moves into those middle grades, the time might lengthen a little bit. But the switch for me is when my kids get into the high school ages, rather than heap a bunch of requirements upon them, I find that they actually can, especially because we started this from the beginning, they actually can be trusted to have large periods of time working on their interests. So we still keep it short. I had a mom reach out to me recently and just say, I don't have time. You know, my kids don't really have any time for pursuing their interests because it takes them so many hours to get through high school curriculum. And my challenge for her was, do they need all of that?
Right.
You know, you have to look forward to what the end goal is for this particular child. And that's not something I could tell her because I don't know her kids. But I did say, you know, ask the Holy Spirit for help. What is the Lord's plan for this child? And how can I help them move in that direction? And so perhaps, you know, and I don't want to tell her, just throw it all out the window, but that's what I was thinking. But perhaps there are things that you can scale back that aren't necessary or can be lumped together. If you're somebody who likes checklists, maybe there's just a way to rearrange things so that you're doing multiple skills at the same time. As a mom, we get to help our kids steward their time, and we don't want to bog them down with a bunch of stuff that isn't going to serve them in adulthood. I know for me, you know, I learned a lot of things. I graduated from university here in Missouri, and I learned a lot of things that were required for my degree, but I couldn't tell you what they were now. You know, I graduated with honors, but it was like memorize and dump it. So how helpful was that? You know, I know that everything has a helpfulness. So the skill of perseverance, the skill of, you know, learning how to study, all of those things, it's not that it was wasted. But it doesn't have to follow a certain path. We don't have to follow a structured curriculum that mimics a public high school. We can serve our children in a way that is appropriate for them.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know what it looks like in the state you're in, but I know here in Pennsylvania, the restrictions, I think we are one of the tightest states. I think
that's hard.
Maybe New York State. Yeah. But even with that, I don't think that the requirements are that hard. And a lot of homeschooling parents in Pennsylvania, they will find ways to make homeschooling work within the state laws. So whatever requirements you have, I had an older, more experienced homeschool mom tell me a couple of years ago, take what your kids are doing. Look at what they're doing. Are they breeding dogs? Are they learning to start a business? What are they spending all their time doing? And then find ways to fit that into a credit, to make it a credit of what they're, what's required. And so that's what a lot of us are doing in an area where there are some more restrictions on what we have to teach, what has to be part of the curriculum in high school. But there's ways that you can make it work. And ultimately, as the homeschool parent, you get to determine what makes up that credit for whatever, for a small business, if that's what you want to call it. And just thinking about what you said about short lessons, I've experienced this so many times with myself, especially in the beginning. We had our plan of everything that I was going to get done that day. And we would get to the last thing, whether it was science or whatever. And they had checked out so long ago.
Right.
That what I had to finally realize was I am just doing this lesson for me. So I can check off my box so I feel good about myself. But they are learning nothing. And so when we cram their day with all these things that we think they're supposed to be getting, I think we're doing them really more of a disservice than anything, because they will learn. They will always be curious. They will always be looking into something, and they really do need that space. They need extra time in their day to figure out. They need to fail at things. They need to problem solve, to just learn what they're good at, what they like, or when they fail, how to just try again, to try a different way.
Yes. And I went through that same process of evolving. And I think I've been on YouTube for probably 8 years, maybe 9 years, something like that. And if you go back to my earlier videos, it's all there. I'm so structured. I had our day planned by the half-hour increments, for that season. That's what made me feel okay, I guess. I don't know. But I did get to the point that I had to finally realize, okay, I need to have the courage, because I know this isn't working for us. And I need to have the courage to say, I'd rather do one thing well today than 5 things halfway and nobody's really getting anything out of it. It just looks good on a piece of paper. But it was that year that I decided, okay, we're going to do a family subject. We're going to do one. We're not going to, some people could do really well. Maybe they have the morning baskets, where they're like 15 minutes of this and 15 minutes of that and 50, read from this book, read from that book. It did not work for my kids or for me. And so that's where you step in. You say, okay, this is my house. I have this authority over my house to say this isn't working for us. What can work? And it's okay to go that route. And for us, it was deep diving into one subject. So we would pick a history book, like we went through the whole story of the world at that time. And we would really enjoy that. And I wouldn't feel pressured to read it quickly and put it down to grab the next thing. Because for us, it was, let's really immerse ourselves in this. Let's sit around and color. Let's listen to the audiobook. Let's do something with that. And that's it for the day. That is our family subject. And then we can move on in peace to something else and know that that was enough. And that's the way it's been for me for years now, and what we stick to. I'm really amazed. And I think this is part of the reason that moms need, someone who's walked through this to say, you can do it. Because it really is just about the courage that you're not failing your kids. I'm amazed now that I have older kids who are entering into different areas of their life, that even though we did not cover as much as you would have covered if you were in a more traditional school or even in a more structured homeschool, they just, there's the way that we did things with more immersion. They just got a small sampling of things. But I'm amazed at how they took the things that we learned and built upon them, with their own initiative. And that instead of seeing, okay, this is such a lack, they're filling in those gaps with whatever it is that they need to support them in their endeavors. And I have teens who are very different from one another, all came out of our same household, very different interests, different learning styles, but they're thriving in the way God made them to be. And it wasn't all dependent on me. Everything's not on my shoulders to somehow be this amazing homeschool mom who provides them with everything they need to know for life. No, we're still figuring out. I have an 18-year-old. She's working on starting her own business. And what does that look like? Well, we're figuring it out together. It's not done now that she's 18. We're still hand in hand learning that together. She's learning it so much more powerfully because it's her life. It's a big deal to her. And so it's not like
Yeah.
a curriculum that's saying, imagine that you were starting a business and blah, blah, blah. You know, she's got skin in the game here. This is her life, her money, her investing, and homeschooling is continuing on, you know, in full
Yeah,
force with
right.
her as she approaches 19.
Yes. And that is what's so exciting is that if you let kids go off in their own direction in something that they're passionate about, then they continue and they're self-driven. You don't have to push them. They propel themselves forward.
Right.
And all you have to do is let them feed that natural curiosity. And I think I couldn't agree with you more. Moms that are just starting out need to hear this. I wish someone had said this to me, that I didn't have to learn it the hard way. I wish I had been able to let go a little bit sooner and let my kids just enjoy the process rather than feeling like we had to cross off all these things. Can you give parents just some help for a mom that's worrying, like wants to step out in a direction like this, but is worrying about not getting everything done, or is my child going to be missing out?
Right. And yes, your child will miss out. Any child is going to miss out, whether they're in a public school, private school, homeschool. You cannot do everything.
Yeah.
You cannot learn everything. That's all there is to it. We're humans. We have only 24 hours in the day. We have, you know, a maximum capacity of the amount of information we can take in. So just be okay with that and say, my child's going to miss something and it's okay. And then I always come back to that you have to look at the big picture goal for your child. And again, ask the Lord, what is my child's future? You know, that's something that I've been praying over my kids since they were little. But what is your big picture goal? When this life is done, what will really matter? If they ever get to algebra and understand it, is it really going to matter? If they're not going for a career that's important, then perhaps you don't even need to do it. You know, look at that big picture. Look at this child as they're growing and evolving. And remember that there's two main things that you need to do in order to succeed as a homeschool mom. It's to teach your kids how to learn, because that's a skill that they need to carry on through the rest of their life to be successful in whatever God leads them to do, and then help them to find a love for learning. And if they have those two things, then they will continue on with educating themselves as long as they live. And your homeschool is not the end of their learning. It's just the beginning where you're helping them to develop that and then sending them out to do more of it on their own. I am learning as much now as I did as a teenager, maybe more, because I'm really interested in things and I'm learning about them. That's a gift that my parents gave to me, was, you know, well, let's figure it out if you're interested in that. You know, maybe the two of them knew nothing about it, like you said with you and your husband, but they supported me in figuring out how to learn that for myself. And so you don't even need to be qualified. You don't need to be the most educated person to teach your children, because you're coming alongside them to lead them forward into whatever it is that they're interested in. And I did, you know, there's certain things that you think, like math, for example, it's not something I enjoy. And, you know, so I have those kids that my oldest, I'm glad she was my oldest because she's good and stubborn. So she helped me break through a lot of things that I was holding on to as a homeschool mom. And we were working on algebra together and just crying over it together, you know, because math is not her thing. And she said to me, why do I need to know this? And she was really insistent. And I was like, because, you know, that was my answer. Because. And so even though, you know, I wanted her to complete that course because I felt like it was the right thing to do, when I took a step back and I looked at her life, at this point, she had like laid out before me a goal. She knew what she wanted to do with her life. And algebra was not going to serve her in what she knew for her life. She needed direction in business math. She needed to understand how personal finance, those things were helpful to her. So I came to her and I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's quit today. And that was that.
Oh, good for
We
you.
ended the program. We did not continue it. We did not complete it. I thought if I was in your shoes and I was trying to learn something that wasn't necessary for my life, would I want to waste my time on that? And it was no. And so, you know, for her, that was the right thing to do. Now, if I have a child who's not as defined and is kind of really just out there and iffy, what I tell them is we can cut back the amount that we do each day, but we're going to continue this discipline because you're not quite sure what you're planning to do with your future course. And so we're just going to keep persisting in this and learning a little each day as you go forward until you're more solid in what your plan is. And if this doesn't serve you, then we'll end it. So that's kind of how I handle, because most of my kids want to throw algebra out the window. But then I did talk to a mom recently, and she said, I was homeschooled during high school. And I just loved math. And I begged my parents to let me be on the math team, this competition. And I'm looking at her like, there are people like you, but there are. And if that's your child, you're not going to have to drag them through it. That's their passion. God put them in it. Let them go.
Right. Yes. Well, this is good encouragement for me too, because our 16-year-old daughter, she's Algebra 1. And so in Pennsylvania, Algebra 1 and geometry are required. I thought Algebra 2 was required too. So our oldest son did Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. He did pre-calc.
Oh, wow.
And now our second son actually loves math. And our oldest son, he kind of liked math. But my daughter, who's 16, she hated algebra. It was exactly what you described. And so she's in geometry now, which has been okay. But when I found out Algebra 2 is not required, I was like, no, let's do something else. Yes. And I think she would love business math. I know that would be such a great option for her. And even looking back at the Algebra 1, I mean, there is a point where you want to teach your kids perseverance in certain areas. But I also think, too, there were ways we probably could have made things work to get that credit in a way that wasn't so just like the way everybody does it. Like I think of some moms that I know that are doing chemistry. Chemistry is required in Pennsylvania. You have to give that to your child. But the way they're doing it through YouTube videos. Not all, but ones that don't have like a textbook style child that can just learn by reading the textbook. They are doing different experiments in the kitchen, and they're finding ways to meet the requirements that are just not traditional ways.
Absolutely. I haven't done any high school science courses with my kids, but I have one who's very interested, and he just has picked up through books or videos. He has such a head full of knowledge on his own that I never presented to him. I never said, now we're going to read page 1, page 2. It's just, he's absorbing it like a sponge, and he'll tell me things. I'm like, oh, nice, because I don't know. Yeah. But he loves learning that information. So there you go. It's just, when it comes to persevering through things, if we find that thing that makes our kid tick, they're going to have perseverance. I've seen that with my daughter. Academics were not her thing, but she is, she preserves to the point that, the rest of us are like, just give it up already. When it's something that she wants to do, and this is interested. Yes. I mean, she will just beat the odds. She will work hard. She has that skill within her about the things that really matter to her. And so it's very exciting to watch her move into adulthood, because people are like, wow, you're really unique. Well, she's just been allowed to kind of run after her own wild horse without us saying, slow down, it's not time, or you need to go this way, or you need to do that. And, here she is now. Part of this, again, it comes back to courage to allow our kids to be different, to pursue different things. And like I said, I had the child who learned to read at 4. Well, that's really fun as a homeschooling mom to be like, oh yes, my child's reading chapter books. So, there they are with their pigtails. That's fun. But if we're going to be okay with that, we also need to be okay with the child who doesn't pick it up until they're 10. We've got to be okay with both spectrums, because God made every child uniquely, and he has a perfect plan for them. And honestly, if my child is passionate about being a garbage collector and loves the Lord and is just kind to others, then that's the path I want to encourage them on, as much as, my child wants to, whatever amazing, glorified career they want to be in. It's just partnering with the Lord to say, where are you going, and can I help you get there? Whatever it is, Yes. Now, that being said, like you talked about with YouTube and other technologies, one thing that I feel like is really important with delight-directed learning is using technology intentionally. That's something in my home. I know that For my kids, for most kids, there are plenty of things online that are just time suckers that do not encourage anything productive within our kids. And so we have been, we've worked from the beginning to help our kids to choose profitable ventures for their time online. Yeah. So that's something, that you have to decide within.
Are you being entertained, or are you using the internet as a tool to get you from here to there?
Yes, exactly. So, limiting their availability to devices has been the way we've managed that, because then before they do something, we can kind of check in and say, what is your plan with this time that you're going to spend? I know even for myself, it's so easy to just waste an hour online. Like, where did that go? So that's part of me shepherding my kids' hearts is kind of, yes, I want you to use this technology. It's amazing. It makes directed learning so much easier. I have a child who has become an excellent musician and never had an in-person lesson in his life because he wanted to do it. He got online and found people that could teach him. We did one semester with Voltberg Music Academy. And then he just took off, and everything's available. I have a friend who's in his 50s who learned plumbing because he was tired of paying a plumber. And so he got on YouTube and figured it out for his house. He calls my husband, I fixed the sink by myself. It's an amazing resource if we use it well.
It is. Yes, it is. Well, Julie, this has been such a great conversation. I've really learned a lot myself and just been encouraged to find someone else that has such a similar philosophy to ours. And just thank you. Thanks so much for coming on.
This is fun. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Make sure to check out Julie's YouTube channel and her blog. I know you'll be encouraged and find lots of ideas on there. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.